All right. And next up, we are going to be looking at Blazor static web apps. So, hi, Melissa.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. We're not slowing down this afternoon. We've got a lot of great content this afternoon, and I'm excited. I love Blazor static web apps, so I'm excited to see what you've got for us.
Yeah, awesome. I'm excited
All
to
right.
be here.
Okay, take it away.
Cool. Yeah, so definitely very excited to be talking to everyone globally at .NET Conf and talking about Azure Static Web Apps with fullstack.net. And I am coming to you live from Australia, so it's morning time for me, and I hope everyone's been enjoying the last few days of the conference. So today we will be talking about Azure Static Web Apps, what that is, and how you can use it with full stack .NET applications using Blazor WebAssembly and .NET in your backend as well. I'll talk about some of the ways we can do debugging and deployment, how you can get up and running, and even talk about how you can get into some advanced scenarios. We only have 25 minutes, so I'll try and be quick, 25 to 30 minutes. So a little bit more about me. So my name is Melissa Houghton, and I am a lead software engineer and developer relations for a company here in Australia called Azenix. I'm also a Microsoft MVP in developer technologies. I try to be quite active on the socials, and my socials are up on the screen, so please connect with me if you want to connect. So today, Azure Static Web Apps. Azure Static Web Apps is a serverless solution from Azure to deploy and host your static web apps. It really helps you accelerate that development experience with global hosting and different serverless backend API options and really streamline that build and deployment cycle. And we can use it with our full stack .NET apps, which is why I'm here for you today. But the way it works is it links up using your GitHub Actions or other pipelines directly into your code repository so that when you push your changes, it deploys it directly to Azure. It takes care of that hosting for you because it's a serverless solution, and it makes it really quick to have that turnaround time to get your applications out to market a lot quicker. And there's some really cool features with it as well. So you get globally distributed hosting. So it means that your static content can be closer to your customers faster. There's that streamlined build and deployment process that we'll take a look at how quick it is to get up and running. They even provide custom domains options and free SSL certificates for you as well. So if you're having your company website on there, you can make sure that it's secure and you have your company URL up there ready for you. There's also some built-in authentication and routing rules available for you so you can secure your application from the start. And it even generates staging environments so that you can see and share with your teammates the changes that you're doing before you merge in those changes as well. And there's some really nice tooling to help us get started, including a static web app CLI and support within the .NET and Azure CLIs as well. And of course, Azure Static Web Apps works well with .NET 7. So this conference is all about .NET 7, and Azure Static Web Apps support for .NET 7 is now generally available as well, which is really exciting. So we can already get up and running with all those new features you've been hearing about for the last few days, building full stack .NET applications with our Azure Static Web Apps. And the way we can use full stack.NET is with Blazor WebAssembly in the front end. So in the name, it needs to be static content in the front end. And there are options for using JavaScript and other static content frameworks, but we love .NET here, so we want to use Blazor WebAssembly, which is a full-featured front-end framework that runs .NET client-side in your browser using WebAssembly. And because it's .NET and you can have .NET on your front and back end, you can share your component models across the client and server browser and build those powerful full-stack .NET web applications. And on the back end, we can pair it with things like Azure Functions using .NET. So Azure Functions, you've probably heard about them throughout the conference, but it allows you to run code-based blocks based on triggers. There's that event-driven automated scaling, another powerful serverless solution. There's no infrastructure management, and it has flexible pricing options. With .NET 7, which is generally available in Azure Functions as well now, there's also an enhanced isolated worker model, which allows us to more easily work with things like dependency injection and has an isolated process support for the functions runtime. So there's a lot of improvements with .NET 7 that we can now bring into our full stack applications that we're hosting in Azure Static Web Apps. And so let's take a look at how we can get up and running with one of these full stack applications. So I'm going to switch over to my Visual Studio, which I have updated to the latest version, which is also available today. And this is a basic project for a full stack .NET application. Everything is in .NET 7. It looks quite similar to .NET 6, and it was actually only a few steps to upgrade this package that I had. I have 3 different projects here. I have one for my Blazor WebAssembly app, which has our weather forecast pages that we know and love. And then I have an Azure Function endpoint here as well, which is just doing an HTTP GET request and making up a few temperatures for us. But I also have another class library here that has my shared data models. And these data models are shared across the front and back end. So that's one of those examples of how you can use the full stack .NET applications. But I want to deploy this. So right now it's on my local computer, and I also have it already up in GitHub as well, but it's not on Azure yet. You can see I don't have any workflow files here or anything like that, but we're going to set up a GitHub action to deploy this directly to Azure. And we can actually get Azure to do that for us. So if we go over to the Azure portal, what we can do is from within here, we can go and get static web apps. And we're going to create one of these. And we're just going to call this .NET Conf 22 live demo. Well, you might hear SWA used a lot. That's the abbreviation for static web apps. And with static web apps, there's currently 2 hosting plans. So there's the free one, which actually gives you quite a lot of resources. So you can use those, the custom domains, you can have your SSL certificates, the built-in authentication is all part of that free plan for you there. So you can do a lot of powerful things without having to pay. But there's also the standard option, which in AUD, it's about $12. It's a bit less if you go back to US dollars. But that gives you a few extra features for you to enhance your larger production applications. So it's nice and affordable, and it gives us some options there. So I'm going to say East Asia because that's closest to me in Australia. But you'll see here, it allows you to select from different deployment options. So we have GitHub and Azure DevOps are first class built in, but there's also options to add in some other deployment places as well. And actually GitLab and Bitbucket have now been generally available for us to hook up into there with our Azure Static Web Apps as well. But I've already logged into my GitHub account, so it has that linked there for me. And you can choose different organizations. So if you're setting this up for the company you work for, you could do that as well. And we're going to say .NET Conf Live Demo is the name of it. And you can also choose the branch. So no matter what branching strategy you have, you can set up Azure Static Web Apps with this. Now here it'll ask you for the build default presets. So you can kind of get an example of other frameworks that are available, but we want to use Blazor because we love full stack .NET. And they'll automatically fill out some of these areas for us. I have everything in a parent source folder, so I'm just going to adjust this here. And it'll go ahead and review and create. And what this will actually do, once I click create, is it'll actually create that GitHub Action workflow file for me. I've already authenticated it to my Azure, or to my GitHub, so it'll create that file and within my repository. So if we go back, deployment's complete, and we just refresh on here, we can now see there's a workflow file that has been in there. We can click on this and take a look at what it's doing. So all it's doing is building and deploying on any pushes to our main branch, which is the branch we told it about, or closing any pull requests. And that'll use the static web apps deploy action, and it'll push it out and deploy it immediately to our Azure Static Web App, which is great. So we don't even have to actually know how to do the CI/CD. It sets that up for us. But of course, we can go in and add a whole bunch more actions to do things like test and make a really robust CI/CD pipeline. So if I go over to the actions, I can see it's already kicked it off and running for us as well. So it'll push it out and automatically run it right away. And what it will do is it'll automatically deploy to a generated URL. If I go back to the portal, I can go to the resource and I can see it's generated this nice calm grass URL for me. If I click on it now, there's not going to be anything there because the action hasn't finished running. And the action does take a bit more time to run than what we have here today. So I'm going to head over to one that's finished from just another copy of the same repository, but the action's already finished running. And I can see that it's worked here. And within that, we can also look at the workflow file, and it's the same exact thing. But what we can do in the portal, if I go back here, find the static web app that's complete, and go directly to the URL, and it's all up and running. This one's called Ashy Desert, but it's the same thing. So it's just a few steps to get something live that you can start sharing with your team or even yourself. You can use the fun generated URL if you want, but as we said, there's custom domains up there ready for you as well. So that's how you can get started in the portal. If I go back to my slides, we talked about the deployment option there and how it's that first-class integration with GitHub and Azure DevOps. So it set up that GitHub Action workflow file for me, and it'll do a similar type of thing within Azure DevOps. And now generally available is support for other providers such as GitLab and Bitbucket as well. So you can integrate into your different repositories. And what it does is it'll do that automatically build and deploying, and it actually will create staged versions within our pull requests as well, which we'll see in a little bit. But it now has that globally distributed hosting right from the start from within our Azure Static Web App on that generated URL. I did have to choose a location when I was setting up the static web apps in the portal, but that was for the functions hosting on the back end. So all of the static content is globally distributed. No matter where you are, you can access it nice and quick. There's also some really great tools to help us with that local development process. I had my Visual Studio open, and if I had more time, I would go through all the debugging and everything, but you can run it and debug it as you normally would within your Visual Studio. But there's also some really great tools such as the Static Web Apps CLI. And this CLI lets you do your build and your deployment and all of your configuration, and you can use it alongside things like Visual Studio Code. And there's an additional extension within Visual Studio Code, which lets you do your debugging and testing out of your static web apps. And the cool thing about this, compared to just running your front and back end individually, is it'll actually set up a proxy server to emulate what the static web app is doing for us up in Azure. So when we have it hosted, what we have is our static content server, and we have our Azure Function runtime hosted in the backend. And there's also an authentication between the two of them as well. So what the CLI will do will actually emulate these three different parts, and it'll proxy all of your requests through a single port. So it's similar to when it's hosted on Azure. You only have to hit one port, and it'll go to all the different hosted options as well. So it's a really nice way to emulate what we have running live in production. There's also some really exciting new backend API options. So Azure Functions is what's generally available now and what you can go out and use in your production app. But in preview at the moment, we have 3 other options as well, which is the Azure API Management, Azure Container Apps, and Azure App Services. So with these new backend options, of course, they all support .NET, but you can build some really powerful backend microservices and really robust APIs. And you can actually bring in, so the way it's set up is to bring in existing APIs as well. So these APIs can be some big microservices that you already have or ones that you're creating new, but you can connect it to your Azure Static Web Apps. And one that I am really excited about is Azure Container Apps. So this is a serverless containers for microservices, and it allows you to build your ASP.NET Web APIs and minimal APIs, as well as worker services. But because it's serverless, it really focuses on apps, not infrastructure. And what we saw with some of the earlier sessions in .NET 7 is there's that really focus on making it easy to set up the containers and have everything ready for you in a containerized environment. So we can leverage all of those powerful things in our Azure Static Web Apps as well. So let's take a look at how you can get set up with an Azure Static Web App that's using container apps. So if I go back to my here, so basically I have a static web app here that is just a Blazor front end. So the way it works when you're using some of the new backend options, or even in functions, you can do it's called bring your own rather than the one that's managed within the static web app, is you can have your already deployed static content within your static web app, and then you can link the API, and we'll see what that looks like. So if I go to this API section on the left, what I can then do is click on link. And we can see that function app is available as one of the bring your own options, but I'm going to go with container app. And I have my container app already deployed here, so I can just select it from the resource and click link. And you'll see there's this little information sign. So it says, when linking, authentication will be configured to restrict your backend requests from the static web app. So it's already going to set up some authentication rules for you, and you can go and edit those afterwards, but it's nice that it's built in from the start when you do the linking. So we'll click the link, and it'll take a moment and then link it up. Cool. And now we can actually navigate to the resource, and we can see the authentication that it's set up for us. So I'm at the container app I just linked to. In the identity provider, it now has Azure Static Web Apps set as an identity provider. So it's configured all of that authentication from the start for us, which is nice. So it's just a few steps to bring in some of those new backend options and link into your powerful .NET apps. If we go back to my slides, if you want to get into more advanced scenarios, there's even some extra features to help you get into that enterprise level applications that are hosted on Azure Static Web Apps. There's something called Enterprise Grade Edge, which combines the capabilities of Azure Static Web Apps, Azure Front Door, and Azure CDN. So what this does is it caches your assets at the edge, allowing you to have a global presence, faster page loads, and enhanced security as well. So you can really accelerate your applications and make them enterprise level with these really nice and quick hosting options with Azure Static Web Apps. Another thing that's really great with Azure Static Web Apps that I mentioned before is the authentication. So there is built-in authentication for Azure Active Directory, GitHub, and Twitter. And there's also an option to add in custom authentication providers. So the custom provider is only available on the standard plan, but it's nice that even on the free plan, we have authentication set up and ready for us as well. Another thing I should have mentioned with the linking of the Azure Container Apps is that linking is available only on the standard plan. So that static web app that I had set up where I linked the backend, that was one that was set up on the standard plan. But as we saw, it's not too much money to host on the standard plan, so it's nice that they give you those options. So let's take a look at what that authentication can look like, and a bit more advanced of a static web app example. So I'll take you first to the code that we're going to be looking at. So this is a static web app that I've actually set up for a website, for a side project that I have. Actually, I'll show you the website first so that you know what you're looking at. So the website is for a wine business that my husband and I are running. My husband is a trained winemaker, and winemaker is his day job, but we are making our own wine on the side. So I decided, why not make our website with fullstack.NET on Azure Static Web Apps? So this is a Blazor WebAssembly app. It has some Azure functions in the backend, and if you can see up here, I have a custom domain. So I've configured it to use custom domain. It has the SSL cert. This is the live site. You can go navigate to it now. I have a few different pages, such as an about, where you can hear a little bit about us, and a shop. There's nothing in the shop. We're still making the wine, so it's not ready just yet, but it will be soon. So if we look at the code and how I've set this up, for the components and the layout and everything, I'm using a component library that is free and open source called MudBlazor. So it applies material design components to your Blazor applications. So I have things like a mud text for my H3, but I could also just have a normal H3 URL in there as well. I also have this is all .NET 7 as well, and I also have my Azure functions that have been upgraded to .NET 7 and are using that isolated worker model as well. So I have a Git endpoint, and I'm actually using Entity Framework Core 7 as well. So one of the things that's really great about the upgrades to the Azure functions is that it's easier to do dependency injection. So in order to configure my Entity Framework, I have added it into my configuring services in a very similar way that you would within your other .NET applications. So this is just doing a get to a SQL database using Entity Framework to get the products that we would show on the front end there. But I also have a post endpoint as well. So I'm starting to build it out, and there's things that I might not want everyone to access. So I decided that I also needed to set up some authentication. And I've actually done that in a pull request for us so that we can see what that looks like within the preview environments as well. So this is within the GitHub for the wine website. I have a pull request already here. This has already all been deployed to static web apps. Quickly go back to the portal. We can see I have my custom URL in the static web app as well. So if I go to my pull request, what it's done is automatically, as part of my pull request, the GitHub action has run, and it has created a staging environment for me and my teammates to go and preview the changes that I've already set up in there. So if I go to the preview site, what I've done is I've added a new login page. So all this page is doing is, I'll just go back actually to the pull request so we can see the changes. So the files that I've changed is more just to set up what it looks like on the front end to, within our Blazor WebAssembly, add the authentication state. We've added in a page for the login buttons and just a package to help us do that. But the authentication is actually built in and ready for us from Azure Static Web Apps, and they use a systems folder. So we'll see what that looks like. So if I go back to here and click on the staging website again, then we will go to the login page, and I'm going to say I want to log in with GitHub. And hopefully it works. Oh, I'm already logged into GitHub, so that didn't work. But basically what it should do, if I say, let's say log into Twitter, so what it will do is it'll actually set up the authentication flow for us. So this is all through Azure Static Web Apps. I didn't configure it to have the provider. This was part of the built-in things for us there. And so that's all good. If I return home, I had some pages that, because I was already logged in with GitHub, this page only popped up once I was logged in. So that's really nice. So you can have that authentication flow with just a few steps, changing your front end and securing your back end, but it sets up those providers ready to go for you. We can have those custom URLs, as we saw within here. And you can even see within the portal, you can see your preview environments that are ready. So you can keep track of all the different ones that you have and navigate from there as well. Great. So if we go back to our slides, we have seen a lot of really great stuff today, a bit of a whirlwind tour of using Azure Static Web Apps and how you can use it with your full stack .NET applications. You can build really powerful Blazor WebAssembly apps with using things like component libraries to have really robust applications. And when it's hosted on the Azure Static Web Apps, you have that globally distributed hosting, you have the streamlined build and deployment, and those seamless staging environments that make it really nice developer-first experience. We've also seen how we can use it with our some managed Azure functions, and even with the upgraded .NET 7 and having things like Entity Framework and really robust functions as well. We looked at some of the other API options that are available in there and how we can link those up and have even more powerful enterprise level .NET full stack applications hosted on Azure Static Web Apps. So get started today. You can build those full stack serverless web apps with that streamlined CI/CD to Azure. There's that free plan option to allow you to try it out, get up and running, host your small projects, and do all the things you need to do, and tons of learning resources available for you as well. So there's a link there to link you to some learning resources, but there's tons of free learning resources and tutorials out there on the Microsoft website as well. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this whirlwind tour of Azure Static Web Apps with fullstack.net.
Wow, that was awesome. I love static web apps, and I think you did an amazing job of summarizing the coolness in a half hour. And it was fun that you showed a real world example too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jeff also is a fan of the static web apps.
Big fan of Azure Static Web Apps. My gosh, Melissa, I love how easy it is to get things set up, to get things deployed, and showing how really it's turnkey once you have your app built. My goodness.
Yeah, definitely. Tons of great features in there and many things you can do with it, of course.
At what point would you recommend somebody taking a look at the next step up, right? So we have the free, right? There's the free plan for static web apps, and then there's a next step up. Is there a point where you recommend folks say, you know what, you got to take a look at the what is it, $10 a month plan?
Yeah. So that's when, so if you need a custom provider for your authentication outside of the GitHub, Twitter, and Azure Active Directory, you do have to go on the standard plan for that. Or if you want to link any of those, bring your own APIs, so bringing your own functions or bringing your own the Azure Container Apps that we saw quickly and the API management and all of that, that's required on the standard plan as well. And same with that enterprise grade edge. So I think once you get into a more enterprise level application that you need a few extra levels of configuration, that's when it's good to go to the standard plan.
Cool.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks a bunch, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.